I heard a guy on TV, I thought it was great, this past week, who was talking about when he was getting used to doing things in live television. And this is live in the sense that I'm live now. You might not be watching it live. I hope you are. I hope you come live. There's something special about when it's live because all the goof ups can't get covered up. Anyway, he was talking to a colleague or a boss or something about the show, and he was saying how it's so difficult to get ready for live television. And live YouTube, it's really difficult to get ready for it because particularly when you're both in front of the camera and behind the camera and trying to click all the buttons and do all the talking and it's really, really difficult to get two sides of your brain going. Anyway, his boss said to him, "We don't do it because we're ready. We do it because it's 11:30. It's 10 o'clock. And we're doing it." Now, we haven't always been able to get live at 10 o'clock as we're supposed to, but I believe this week I finally got it right. It's an illustration for life as you got to do things on the fly in life because you're never going to have as much prep time as you wish you had. Today, we're carrying on. I'll give you the same introduction I've given you before. This is so important. This book, The Training of the 12, we're looking at the chapter with the clip on it today, which is chapter 7. And this is all for the people who are leading the people who are leading the people. Now, Breakthrough Pathways is a system that we are building, working on all the levels that need to happen inside of a local church. Now, it's very important that this is local church driven. And I believe that most things that are focused on discipleship today are on what I call the sixth rung of the ladder. And they're important. We've got way too many people on the first and second rungs of the ladder that we need to work with. So the situation is that I got an incoming call. See, that happens. And so I'm going to decline that. It's from something that I don't know. Where was I? This is the thing about going live. Our problem is that we really desperately want to get people to lead others, but we're having a really hard time filling the hopper at the bottom, generally speaking. Now, there are some approaches that say, well, you got to get the guys committed. So you get them to sign a covenant in blood that they'll be there for the next 13 weeks or whatever it is, and they'll never miss and so on. Well, people who are down at level 1 or level 2 aren't ready for them. And I think that we've missed that completely, that we have to find ways to get to the people at the bottom. But, and in Breakthrough Pathways, I want you to sign up for it. Well, here, let's watch.
The church is at a crossroads. Attendance is down, communities are disconnected, and many wonder what's next. At Breakthrough Pathways, we believe the answer isn't in more programs or professionals. It's in you, ordinary people making a real difference.
So I'm us live every Thursday at 10 a.m. for real conversation, real solution, and the future of the church. Let's build something that lasts. Subscribe today and be part of the breakthrough.
So we're going to help you with all of that from the beginning level all the way up. Now, the main system is an integrated, driven over the internet. A lot of the materials, but for people in the local church who are rung 1 or rung 2. I'm thinking particularly of the young people. I know young people today often grow up through the church or come into the church, maybe through a youth group as teenagers. Then when they go off to college, at least half of them fall away. Now, some are always going to fall away. Let's get over it. I'm sure Jesus fell away, so it shouldn't surprise you when it doesn't work every time. We lose an inordinate number of people going from home, moving away to a new environment. And I want to have a system, and Richard and I worked on this. We thought about this and prayed about it as we travel and as we talk in the attitude of prayer together. We want to get the system in such a way that we can take people at all levels, the seasoned Christian at age 50 who's been around the block a few times and suffered through a few hard knocks and found that God's grace is sufficient. And the 30-year-old who's just maybe got their first child for the first time, and they're trying to say, well, I need to step up and be a man. I kind of been a jerk. I've given myself the Sunday afternoon football, and I just with sports and entertainment, all kinds of things. But I really want to take Jesus seriously. Right down to the 16-year-old who says, huh? Well, yeah, you want me to be? Sure. I'm willing to get involved. I believe that young people today are much more ready to get involved in being led. I believe that they're hungry. I believe they're just yearning to have somebody who will show them the way. Some who are from Christian homes, some who are not from Christian homes. And even from the Christian homes, often the parents can have less influence on their kids than their friends of their parents, who can say, you should listen to your father or your mother or whoever. And we want to get at those kids, a vast number of them, so that we can raise some of them up, and they won't all become leaders, but raise some of them up so that they take positions of leadership, both in their youth group, but in other ways within the local church, so they really belong, so that when they move away from home, as most young people do, and go off to college, as most young people do, or university or some other employment, that when they get to that different community, they know how to get engaged in the life of a church. And they can, in fact, help that church that may not yet have much really going on and be a significant influence. People love the leadership of young people. We want to raise up those who can make that difference. But having said all that, what we're doing is a major thing in this podcast is not at that level. It's at a higher level. This is more like up on rung 6. But it's a very important thing. In fact, this chapter today, I would venture to say to you, most pastors really understood what Bruce is getting at. He's a little off topic, quite frankly, but I think there's a reason for that. I have a hunch. I just have a hunch that he was facing kind of political controversy in his ministry, with people saying, I'm this way, I'm that way, and the other guy's bad, back and forth. We wouldn't know anything about that in our day, would we? And I think he's saying, no, you've got to understand what Jesus was teaching in both what he taught and how he taught it and how he related to other people. So in chapter 7, he's talking about religious liberty, and he starts with the subject of fasting. Now, we think of fasting as a kind of a difficult discipline, and he certainly had room for fasting, but he made a contrast between where he was at and what he was teaching and what the people around him, particularly John's disciples. Well, I'm going to give you an outline, and this is my outline, and you can have the chapter. I'll get you the chapter. If you want the chapter to read it for yourself, you can read it in a summary that takes 4 minutes, or a redo in modern language, which I prefer, because that's what I really work from, but I always check back with the original. The original that Bruce wrote was in language and sometimes in references that are a little obscure to us today. But this, using AI, putting it in modern language at a grade 7 level, because that's if you look at the bell curve of where people are, they're at grade 7. 50% of the people are between grade 7 and grade 10. Now, the guy grade 10 level of reading obviously can understand grade 7 level, but the guy who's on the other half of the bell curve is down somewhere, and these are adults. This is American data as best that they can get it, somewhere down around 4th grade level. Now, certainly, if you're down at 4th grade level in reading ability, then you really are starting from down low on the rung. And if you're proud, you think, no, I'm not, and many people are, and they pretend they can do better than they actually can. Didn't intend to say that. So what we need to do is understand these ordinary, we'd call them blue-collar people that Jesus was working with, not of the intelligentsia, not of the people who are raised with the religious patterns, although in virtually every case, I think probably every case, they had that very strong traditional set for them in the Jewish culture. So we're going to kind of take a look at what Bruce had to say about it. And I must confess that I'll blend in some of my ideas. And if you want to check out, make sure whether I'm consistent with Bruce or just ranting way off the campus on this, then you figure it out for yourself. You're a big boy or girl. You can do this, and you can pass this on to other people. And you can ask people to sit down with you and say, you can laugh at this guy. He keeps messing up his words and pressing the wrong buttons on the computer. But come on, give him a break. He's 80 years old, and he's going to get dementia pretty soon. And I find myself dropping words from time to time and using the wrong words. That's what happens when you're 80. But Lord willing, you'll get there too someday. Anyway, so we're going to look at what happened in the situation where Jesus spoke to his disciples. No, I don't want to exit. I don't want to do that. I have no word, man. Oh, there we are. Okay. So with Jesus, when he's speaking on the subject of fasting, he's trying to connect the concept of fasting, not with a rule, but with religious freedom. He builds on a framework of principles, not of rules. We always drift into managing rules because they're easier to manage rather than looking at the principles behind things. And we're going to get to that more later. And the contrast that he's making in the New Testament is between what John's disciples, John the Baptist's disciples, and the Jewish traditions around him, what they thought about this business of fasting, going without food. Now, in the Old Testament, there were specific times of fast for key ones a year. And the tradition had been that in this pattern in the New Testament age, the really high-level Pharisees, they fasted twice a week, on Mondays and Thursdays. And so it became an issue. Now, there are two other issues connected with this liberty thing that we're going to get to in the subsequent chapters next week and the week after. By the way, when Bruce writes the book, he writes all of these three things into one chapter, chapter 7. I'm going to change it so that next week we're going to do 7 part B, but we're going to call it chapter 8. And when you break down, sometimes he does this in chapters, has 3 or 4 divisions in a chapter, doing them one chapter or one podcast each. And there's, I think, 52 or maybe it's 53 of them that we will get to eventually. Okay, so the core issue here, there's a major shift going on between Jesus and his disciples and the religious thinking around them. And he's building on a pattern that you're going to see throughout his teaching early on with his new disciples, saying all bets are off. All of those Old Testament traditions and even those laws are being honored and set aside, and those traditions, but we're dealing with a whole new understanding and the grace that is in Christ through the gospel. Now, transitioning at any time in your life is a struggle. And you'll always have a transition in your life at some point. You know, as a young couple thinks everything's so great and they're in love, and then they have a baby and slam. Whoa! Transitioning is difficult for them. It's not bad, but it's difficult to take on that new life and give it responsibility. To say it's difficult to take on the life of a puppy, let alone the life of a human. And there is within all of us this fear of the unknown, fear it might not work. And so if we stay where we are, we think it's safe. And there's this core issue that we need guidance. And Jesus was giving his disciples guidance in these areas. Now, in the guidance, Jesus served as a buffer between him and John's disciples and the Pharisees and protected his new followers from criticism and danger, and with reason. He didn't do it with domination or authority. He did it with reason. And if you can go and look up the passages, they're all in the download. If you take the download, all those passages are there, and you can study them for yourself. And we've got to understand that traditions are really powerful. They're powerful because they give us safety. And as they faced the problem with religious leaders back in their day, we face the problems with our own people today. Typically, the older people are more entrenched in the patterns and traditions that they developed, that they found useful in their day, but are unwilling to let go of them to move into a new day. We'll get to that later. Jesus John's disciples, John the Baptist's disciples, came to Jesus and said, why aren't your guys fasting like we fast? They were very, very different. Now, many of those John the Baptist followers also became followers of Jesus, and Jesus spoke extremely highly of John the Baptist and his ministry. They never criticized it. He always spoke highly of it. And why were they asking this question? Well, there's some suggestion that maybe there was a rivalry that was arising between John's disciples and Jesus' disciples. But early on in the ministry, John's disciples way outnumbered Jesus' disciples. I would lean towards, and I think Bruce does too, this is a genuine curiosity that they have about how to deal with this subject of fasting. So Jesus, in his ministry to them, he defended his disciples for not fasting and basically said, it's okay if you fast, but it's okay if my people don't fast. He didn't condemn John's followers. I could get off on a tangent here because I see posts all the time of some preacher saying the other guy is a false prophet. Stop it. Stop it. Even if it's true, stop it. You speak for what you stand for, whether that be, in your own community or whatever it is. Take a stand for something, not a stand against something. Jesus did have a high respect for John the Baptist. He said of those born among men, there's nobody better than him. Wasn't perfect, but nobody better than him. And Jesus uses this story, picking up on what John the Baptist is saying, that he's not really the bridegroom, he's just the friend of the bridegroom. And Jesus picked up on that and used it when he taught about fasting. He said, look, when the bridegroom's there, the friends, they can't mourn, because fasting is tied with sorrow and mourning, because they're experiencing joy, just like that's happening at a wedding. And he's saying that his disciples were celebrating his presence, which is really, he didn't say it in those words, but it's an interesting thing that there must have been something in this coterie of people, a small group at this point in time, who were showing a new enthusiasm and joy for life, probably more than John's disciples. And that, I think, is that curiosity. Why are your guys jumping and clicking their heels? We're just going through the drudgery, trying to get other people to repent and come and be baptized. I think there was a bit of that going on. Don't know. Just guessing. You make your guesses. So Jesus did say that fasting isn't all bad. He said that, after he's gone, there'll be time for sorrow, and that will be natural after his departure. And the fasting should be representative of true spiritual needs, not a pattern of discipline or religion, but of what's going on in the soul. Jesus said, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. And when he said that, he's doing mourning about this messed up world and our own personal messed up lives. And we need to mourn about that. We might think we're hot stuff until we stop and get a little dose of humility and realize we don't all have it all together. I am not always right. I just think I am, and that's my problem. And that's a problem with you, too. That's a problem with all kinds of people. And there's time to mourn over that. And in the morning, it will include fasting, and particularly in seasons. We see two illustrations that Bruce pulls up in his book about Peter before accepting the Gentiles. And that was a big shift for him. And then about the sending apart of missionaries. There are times for us to dig down deep into our spiritual life and set food aside. And maybe that's a regular weekly thing for you, but not as a matter of ritual, as a matter of the reality of what's underneath the surface of things. So, and Jesus uses a couple of illustrations, and stories always are really useful. And you can use stories as you teach today, and as you're on the sixth rung of the ladder, you're trying to take those newbies. You can tell them the stories of your life and the stories around you and illustrate them and say, it's like this, it's like that. And Jesus used a couple of stories here about putting a patch on a garment. No, we don't do that anymore. We throw them away. The idea was that you have to have a pre-shrunk piece of cloth, or if you put a new piece of cloth in an old garment, it's gonna rip away, and it's not gonna work. So you've got to have not a mismatch things, but you've got to blend things together. He uses this whole business of wineskins. We aren't too wineskin, no, but the wineskin, as it dried out, would become more less supple and more brittle. And if you put new wine in an old wineskin that's not flexible, it would expand and burst the wineskin. Nobody does that. Nobody did. They understood that. And he's saying that the outward religious practices have got to match the inward spiritual economy. It's a cultural thing. It's a pattern that's got to be a pattern built within. And it starts from up on the sixth rung of the ladder that you set the pattern. And you don't say, oh, stop that, cut that out, no, do this. I'm the leader here. I'm trying to say, why won't you honor me and respect me because I'm in charge here? No, Jesus didn't do. He said those outward religious patterns, whatever you establish, and using fasting as an example, they've got to come from the heart. And that's what people will catch. People always reject the new. And I was fascinated that in 1870, 71 when it was published, so I presume it was written in 1870, when A.B. Bruce wrote this, he saw this. And I think that as he saw this in the life of the church, but in the life of the culture around him, that people were denying the need for change. It's good enough. I'm comfortable the way it is. Those interlopers are coming in and trying to change everything, where they might be trying to change too many things and might be trying to change in the wrong direction. But this denying the need for newness and change is a terrible thing to do, according to Bruce, and I agree. And this whole business of new ways, he uses the word truth. I don't really think the truth actually changes, but the new ways and the new patterns do exist. There was new truth. The Pharisees rejected Jesus' message. And Bruce uses the illustration of the struggles that the reformers had, Martin Luther and the boys, during the time of the revolution, being resisted, they caused their own set of troubles themselves, if you look into the history of the thing. And thousands of people died over it. That's disgusting. And we're almost at the place, in my opinion, in our world, where we're going to die for stuff within the realm of Christianity. We'll have a hard enough trouble with terrorists, but I think these terrorism possibly building within the hearts of people who claim to know the Lord Jesus. And maybe they do know the Lord Jesus today. It's a little side issue there. The tradition will inhibit growth if it's not put in its place. See, when we resist change, we want to stay in our comfort zone. And when you see change coming or adopt change, it's awkward, it's difficult. And you're watching me adopt new technologies on old gear, trying to run this software that I'm running right now is open OBS, Open Broadcasting System. And I'm doing it with YouTube, and I had to learn this, and I'm still learning. And every week I forget what I learned last week and have to relearn it. And it's uncomfortable, but I'm pushing myself because I want to be the example for those around me to push themselves into adopting the new things. People are scared to death today of the newness of what artificial intelligence is doing. I'm embracing it. I'm loving it. I'm enjoying getting to use some of the things and finding that they're helping me understand the word better. And the things, it's not all bad. There is some bad. There's always bad with cultural shifts. We want to acknowledge the things, which is what Jesus was doing here. But we allow for new ways and new growth. So Jesus' conclusion, I think, was really astute. Maybe you want to memorize this verse, Luke 5:39. No one who has tasted old wine the old way wants the new, for he says the old is better. And I can tell you emotionally that when I go and I kind of hide in the closet and pull the shades down because I don't want my grandchildren to see. And I turn on old music. the music of my youth or early adulthood, and it stirs my heart. It's the good stuff. Well, it's no better than if some of the bad stuff back then was not much good in terms of its theology or its approach. That's always true today. And it feels better. The old feels better. And nobody says that, well, I want the new because the new's better. And the new becomes the old. And that's what Jesus is saying. Nobody likes it if it's new. They say the old is better. And he just lets them hang. He doesn't say, but. That just finishes the story right there and lets you think about it. So he leaves us with a challenge to balance tradition and renewal to the new day and learn from both the old and the new. So you want to be like Jesus? Well, don't cling to whatever it is, whether it's new or old. Don't cling to it. Accept both sides. Don't think that everybody's political opinion is wrong and yours is right, or opinion on what preaching should be like or what the organization of the church service should be like. We had a pattern that I grew up with. I can't remember exactly now, but we have a prayer at the beginning, then we'd sing a hymn, and sometimes we sing the doxology, and then we'd maybe have some announcements. Then we'd have special music, which was the old lady in the church who couldn't sing, singing a solo. It was often cringeworthy. And then we'd sing another hymn, and then we'd have somebody, and hopefully some young person would come up and read the scripture. And then at the end, they'd say this ritual thing, and may God add his blessing to us, the reading of his word. And on it would go. And it was the pattern that I grew up with. And then it came along and said, no, let's bunch all the music together. And so we took the songs and bunched them together. But we had to include some of the new things because the new things were better. Well, they weren't necessarily better. Some of them were, some of them weren't. And we had the hymn books. And I remember we got a new hymn book, and people said, it's too heavy. It's heavier than the old one. I can't hold the thing. They liked the old. They knew that number 342 was this and that hymn book. And now in the new hymn book, it's 424. Oh, man, it'll kill you if you cling to the past. So what you got to do, if you want to be like Jesus, is deal with principles and rules. If we took the surface away, what's the principle behind it? And I would suggest that there are some questions that you need to learn to ask yourself. And you say, what would be wrong with, and fill in the blank. And tell me what's wrong with the new thing. That's the oldest bet. Not a good answer. Not a good answer. That's the answer that we're prone to. What's wrong with the new thing? The melody's not singable. Well, you might have a point there. You can't understand the words. Now, wait a minute. You might not be able to understand the words, but maybe someone else in the crowd can understand the words. You're the adult in the room, so be the adult in the room. What do we lose if we give up that pattern and establish this pattern? Because you might lose something. You want to think about that. And if you can embrace something new with something old and find a way to put the two together, then maybe you can get further. Maybe not. But you got to think it through. And you've got to expect that going forward in your life, no matter what, there's going to be transition. There is going to be transition. The hymn books are basically gone, and we've all got projectors now. We throw it up on the screen, and we've lost the notes. And I'm not fond of the fact that we've lost the notes because I used to be able to read music. I don't think I even could now. And I used to like to, sing the bass part in one verse and the tenor part in another verse because it was a challenge to me musically. But is that really a loss of my Christianity or just a loss of some cultural things? I'm not sure I lost any of the message because I lost that. In fact, trying to read those notes might have taken my concentration away from lifting my face and looking forward so others could hear my voice and we could unite together as one in singing. We lost a little bit. Did we really lose anything? Maybe not. But you can expect that things are going to change. Now, sometimes things are so bad that you need a revolution. You need to absolutely slam dunk things. That's the slam dunk the thing. See, that's where I lose words. slam dunk the thing and just throw it away and burn it down. Not, not often. I repeat, not often. I've never run into a church yet, and I've had some opportunity to work with churches that will adopt a newness, and they were headed for the dumpster, and they renewed themselves. I've seen that. I watch a guy that you should follow if you're interested in this is a guy by the name of Mark Clifton. He's a good old boy. He wears a Harvesters International hat, and he's in the Southern Baptist, and he's going to some old churches with maybe even as few as 3 people and getting them to say, okay, we can let go of some of the past and adopt some things of the present and the future. And he's seen amazing work in a few cases, but in some cases, they just refuse to change. Yeah. In most situations, the church is shut down. We're shutting down about 4,000 churches in North America a year and starting about 4,000, so we're breaking even. Of those that shut down, they didn't need to shut down. If somebody had got to them maybe 10 years ago and saying, you're going to shut down in 10 years if you don't evolve and move forward as you need to move going forward. You want to be like Jesus? Well, you got to figure out what needs to change. If you want more fellowship, then have more fellowship. If you, everything doesn't depend on preaching, and it certainly doesn't depend on conduct. On the concept. There's the concept, and there's the conviction attached to that concept, and then there's the change of the behavior, and the behavior always follows slowly. And so we need to see the behavior change, but not for its own sake, based on principles. And we need to respect the past, but we must not fight the future. We need to get out there and research the options for you.
The church is at a crossroads. Attendance is down, communities are disconnected, and many wonder what's next. At Breakthrough Pathways, we believe the answer isn't in more programs or professionals, it's in you, ordinary people making a real difference.
So join us live every Thursday at 10 a.m. for real conversation, real solution, and a renewed vision for the future of the church. Let's build something that lasts. Subscribe today and be part of the breakthrough.
Got to do it. You got to try something new. So I just tried something new this week. It took me a couple hours to figure out how to do it. I put together that commercial in my phone. I'm saying, I want the background music and the music. I'm not fond of it. It's what I could find for free. But you may not like the graphics. Well, that's what I could find for free. Get over it. This is the way it is. And you need to find a way to try some things that are new as well.
The church is at a crossroads. Attendance is down, community.
I didn't mean to do that because I hit my mouse in the wrong place. Oh, it's just hard, Mommy. Know what to do. I'm lost. Oh, it doesn't want to. Okay, we'll just forget it. So we'll go back here. Now, I just want to talk to you heart to heart. Where are you at? If you're not part of the solution, you're actually part of the problem because you're the pattern that other people can gather around. It's like plaque on your teeth. I got a broken tooth in here that I got to get fixed. And the dentist, no, that's what you call the hygienist. She said to me, make sure that you brush that tooth 4 times because plaque sticks to it. The older you get, the plaque sticks to it. And if you're the person who's part of the problem, because you're not part of the solution, you're all covered with plaque and it looks normal and it feels normal to you. But if we're ever going to get to where we need to get to moving forward, we've got to put fasting in its right place. There's a time for the old. There's a time to blend in things new. Maybe this is a day that you want to skip your lunch and just say, Lord, how do I need to change? Who can I take under my wing? I'm up here and I've got all these things and I wish these people come up here, but I got to come down to the level of those ordinary people. Is there a 16-year-old that I can take out for Coke in my church and ask them where they're at? Ask them how much they get out of the Sunday services? Ask them what their friends at school are saying. You see, we live in a multicultural place in our part of Southern Ontario, and our young people, our children are growing up saying, oh, well, we're all the same. My God's the same as your God and so on. It's not true. But we got to teach them how to address the situation without fighting. All I knew when I was a teenager in school was I learned how to fight. And I didn't learn how to win people. And you win people by being patient, listening to their stories, and gradually over time, if you invest enough time with them, they will make a big change in their lives. Now, I hope that you pass this on. Would you please invite somebody else to watch this with you? Use it perhaps in ways that I don't even understand. You can use it on your phone. You can use it on your computer. There's ways to do it. And if you don't like this, then just get the copy of the book and dig down into something old, because that which is old gave us all of the fuel for the pattern today. Well, there you go. I want to see you next week. I want you to bring somebody with you, and I don't even know what this really means yet. Subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. I don't know exactly what that means. It means something to Facebook, YouTube, and I guess they'll send more people, but we're not there yet. But will you help us get further down the road, because we need